Hey guys, tonight we are stepping into the brilliant sunlit world of the Italian Renaissance to meet its greatest and most iconic mind, Leonardo da Vinci. We all know the name, the creator of the Mona Lisa, the painter of the Last Supper, the genius who designed flying machines and tanks 500 years before they existed. But forget the image of the revered old master, the universal genius who excelled at everything he touched. We're going to start with the story of a lonely, illegitimate boy from a tiny village, a boy whose future was already severely limited before he ever picked up a single paintbrush. So before we begin, if you enjoy these quiet dives into history's unglamorous truths, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. And as always, I'd love to know where you are listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. Now let's travel to the rolling hills of Tuscany, smell the olive groves, and ease into the first quiet reason it sucked to be the young Leonardo. Congratulations. The year is 1452. You are Leonardo, and you have just been born in a small stone farmhouse in the Tuscan countryside, just outside the village of Vinci. The good news, you are born in the heart of the Renaissance, a time of explosive creativity, humanism, and discovery. The bad news, your mother, a young woman named Caterina, is an unmarried peasant girl. Your father is a respected and upwardly mobile notary named Ser Piero da Vinci. He will acknowledge you as his son, but he will not marry your mother. You are a bastard. And in the highly structured, guild-governed world of 15th century Florence, that is a very bad thing to be. This is the first great, inescapable burden of your life, the stain of your illegitimate birth. Your father, Ser Piero, is a busy and important man. He will go on to have 4 wives and at least 11 more legitimate children. You are his firstborn, but you are also his side project, a legal and social complication. The identity of your mother, Caterina, is one of the great mysteries of your life. Was she a local farm girl, an orphan? Some more recent theories suggest she may have been a slave from the Middle East. The historical records are frustratingly silent, leaving only the fact of your birth and her subsequent absence from your formal upbringing. You are taken into your father's household, but you are raised mostly by your paternal grandparents and your uncle, Francesco, who teaches you the important things in life, like the names of the local wildflowers and how to properly appreciate a lizard. Your childhood is spent not in a grand Florentine palazzo, but in the rustic simplicity of the Tuscan countryside. It is a lonely but idyllic existence. You are a strange, intensely curious boy. While other children are playing games, you are wandering the hills alone for hours. You are fascinated by the natural world. You watch the flight of birds, sketching the mechanics of their wings. You study the flow of water in the Arno River, trying to understand the secrets of its currents and eddies. You collect insects and plants, dissecting them to see how they work. Your mind is a whirlwind of questions, but there is a door that is permanently closed to you. This is the major historical fact that will shape your entire career. As an illegitimate son, you are barred from the so-called respectable professions. You cannot go to a university. More importantly, you cannot be admitted to one of the major guilds. This means you can never become a doctor, a scholar, or a notary, like your father and your legitimate half-brothers. Your career paths are severely and legally limited. Your main options are a life of manual labor or one of the arts, such as painting or sculpture, which at the time were considered a slightly cleaner, more skilled form of manual labor, a craft, not a high intellectual pursuit. This also means you do not receive a formal classical education. This is an obscure but vital detail of your life. You never properly master Latin, the universal language of every legal text, every scientific paper, and every work of classical philosophy in Europe. Throughout your life, you will refer to yourself, with a mixture of pride and deep-seated insecurity, as an homo senza lettere, a man without letters. This lack of a formal education will cause you to be looked down upon by the university-trained humanists and scholars you will encounter throughout your career. But it also frees you. It frees you from having to learn the world from old, dusty books. It forces you to learn from your own direct, intense, and unfiltered observation of the world itself. Your greatest weakness becomes the very source of your unique genius. You spend your youth filling notebooks with your sketches, intricate drawings of flowers, impossibly detailed anatomical studies of birds, designs for strange machines you see in your mind. Your father, a practical man, recognizes two things. First, that your artistic talent is extraordinary, and second, that it is the only viable career path open to you. So, around the age of 14, he makes a decision. He will take you to Florence, the bustling, competitive and glorious center of the Italian art world. He will use his connections to get you an apprenticeship in the workshop of one of the city's leading masters. It is your only chance. You are leaving the quiet hills of your childhood for the cutthroat world of Renaissance Florence. You are a bastard boy with a thick country accent, no formal education, and no Latin. You have nothing to your name but your remarkable talent, a few notebooks full of strange drawings, and a mind that sees the world in a way that no one has ever seen it before. You arrive in Florence around the year 1466. It is the beating heart of the Renaissance, a city buzzing with commerce, art, and a fierce competitive energy. For a boy from a quiet country village, it is overwhelming, a kaleidoscope of architectural marvels, crowded streets, and the workshops of geniuses. Your father, a callback to his practical nature, uses his connections as a notary to secure you a place in one of the most prestigious and busiest workshops, or bottegas, in the city, the workshop of the great master, Andrea del Verrocchio. This is your chance. It is your only chance. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. You are a certified once-in-a-millennium genius, and you are about to spend the next 10 years of your life as a glorified assistant, performing tedious and menial tasks. You are now an apprentice, a garzone, in Verrocchio's workshop. Your first sacred duty in this temple of high art is to sweep the floors. Your second is to spend hours on end grinding colored rocks and minerals into a fine powder on a stone slab to make paint. It's a deeply inspiring start to your artistic career. This is the major historical fact of your artistic education. The Renaissance bottega was not a quiet, contemplative art studio. It was a bustling, versatile, and often very messy commercial factory. Verrocchio was not just a painter, he was a master craftsman who would take on any commission that paid well. His workshop produced everything: marble sculptures, massive bronze statues, intricate works in gold and silver, decorative banners for public festivals, painted shields, and of course, altarpieces and portraits. You are not here to express your unique artistic vision. You are here to learn a trade from the ground up. Your days are a grind of manual labor. You learn the chemistry of art. You learn to mix egg yolks with the ground pigments to create the luminous, fast-drying paint known as egg tempera. You learn the smelly, difficult craft of preparing wooden panels for painting, applying multiple layers of gesso, a mixture of animal skin glue, chalk, and white pigment, and sanding it down to a perfect ivory smooth surface. You learn the complex and dangerous process of bronze casting. You are a student, but you are also cheap labor. The path to artistic greatness, you discover, is paved with an immense amount of tedium. For years, your own artistic contributions are limited to the most boring parts of the master's paintings. You might be allowed to paint a section of blue sky, a bit of drapery on a saint's robe, or a plant in the corner of a composition. You are a nameless, faceless assistant, contributing to a work that will be signed only by the master. But you are also a sponge. You absorb everything. You watch Verrocchio as he draws, as he models clay, as he works with his patrons. You study the other talented young artists in the workshop alongside you, boys who will one day be famous painters themselves, like Botticelli and Perugino. A callback to your lonely youth. You are no longer alone, but you are in a fiercely competitive environment. Your illegitimacy bars you from the university, but here in the workshop, it does not matter. The only thing that matters is the skill of your hand and the sharpness of your eye. Then, after years of grinding pigments and painting backgrounds, your moment finally comes. It is around the year 1475. Verrocchio is working on a major commission, a large painting of the Baptism of Christ. He assigns you, his most promising apprentice, to paint one of the secondary figures, a single kneeling angel on the far left of the painting. It is your first major public contribution to a masterpiece. You do not just paint an angel, you paint a creature of such breathtaking ethereal beauty that it seems to be lit from within. The softness of its curls, the gentle sadness in its eyes, the subtle turn of its body. It is painted with a new revolutionary technique, using oil glazes to create a sense of light and atmosphere that makes your master's own more traditional, rigid figures look stiff and old-fashioned by comparison. The famous story, told by the 16th century art historian Giorgio Vasari, is that when Verrocchio saw the angel you had painted, he was so humbled and so astounded by the genius of his own pupil that he vowed never to pick up a paintbrush again. This is likely a dramatic embellishment, a myth designed to highlight your prodigious talent. But it speaks to a fundamental truth. You are no longer just an apprentice. You have surpassed your own master. It is a magnificent triumph. You are still, however, expected to help clean the brushes at the end of the day. You are no longer an apprentice. By 1472, at the age of 20, you have been accepted as a master into the Florentine Painters Guild, the Compagnia di San Luca. You are free. You can, in theory, set up your own workshop, take on your own commissions, and finally begin to make your own name. This should be your moment of triumph, the start of a glorious career. But this is the next reason it sucks to be you. Your own mind, the very source of your genius, is your greatest and most intractable enemy. It is a whirlwind of insatiable curiosity that will sabotage your career, infuriate your patrons, and leave a trail of glorious, heartbreakingly unfinished masterpieces in its wake. You are finally a master painter. You have your own workshop. You are a professional. Your first big public job is a commission to paint a grand altarpiece for the chapel of St. Bernard in the Palazzo Vecchio, the seat of the Florentine government. You spend months on the preparatory drawings. You create a revolutionary composition, and then you lose interest and fail to complete it. It is a bold, if not particularly profitable, start to your new career. A few years later, in 1481, you are given an even more prestigious commission by the monks of San Donato a Scopeto. They want a large altarpiece of the Adoration of the Magi. This will be your magnum opus, the painting that will cement your reputation as the greatest artist in Florence. You throw yourself into the work with a manic, obsessive energy. But you are not just painting a picture. You're trying to solve the universe on a single wooden panel. This is where your lack of a formal education, a callback to your identity as a man without letters, becomes both a blessing and a curse. You do not rely on established conventions. You reinvent everything from first principles, from your own direct observation of the world. You fill your notebooks with hundreds of preparatory sketches. You study the anatomy of horses, the geology of rock formations, the botany of every plant you will include in the background. You study human psychology, sketching dozens of faces, trying to capture the precise individual emotional reaction of each bystander to the miracle of the Christ child. Your composition is revolutionary. While other artists depicted the scene as a calm, stately, and rather boring procession, you envision it as a swirling, chaotic vortex of human emotion, with the serene figures of Mary and the child as the calm eye of a hurricane of divine revelation. It is a masterpiece of disegno, of pure design and intellectual force, a concept prized above all in Florence. And then you stop. You have solved the intellectual problem. You have designed the perfect composition, a machine for generating emotion. The actual tedious work of applying the final layers of color, the colorito, seems to be of less interest to you. Your problem is that you are not just a painter. You are a scientist, an engineer, a botanist, and an anatomist, all trapped in the body of a man who is being paid to paint a picture of the Virgin Mary. You become so obsessed with understanding the underlying structure of how a horse's leg works that you forget to actually paint the horse. Why you abandoned this, and so many of your other early masterpieces, is a source of endless debate. Was it a pathological perfectionism that made you unable to commit to a final and therefore imperfect form? Was it a restless, easily distracted mind, always flitting to the next, more interesting problem? Or was it the simple, pragmatic fact that a better job offer came along from a wealthier patron? What is certain is that you pack your bags, you leave Florence, and you move to Milan, leaving the monks of San Donato with a very large, very brown, and very unfinished painting. This becomes the defining pattern of your career. You are a genius at starting things and a master at not finishing them. For your patrons, hiring you is an incredible gamble. You might produce a work that will change the course of art history, or you might produce a handful of beautiful drawings and then get really interested in designing a new type of canal lock, never to return to their commission. The sucky reality of your life is that your mind is a magnificent fountain of ideas, but you are trying to catch them all in a thimble. You are a man who starts 100 journeys, but rarely reaches a destination. Your greatest legacy will be a collection of brilliant beginnings. You leave Florence around 1482, a man in your early 30s. You are leaving behind a city where you have established a reputation as a transcendent genius, but also as a frustrating flake. A callback to the unfinished commissions. The monks of San Donato are still waiting for their masterpiece, and they are not happy. You need a new patron, a new city, a fresh start. You set your sights on Milan, a city ruled by the powerful and ambitious Duke Ludovico Sforza. But you understand that Milan is not Florence. It is a more martial, more political, and less artistically sentimental city. You realize that your reputation as a brilliant but unreliable painter of religious scenes will not get you very far here. So you decide on a career pivot. You are no longer an artist who dabbles in science. You are now a visionary weapons designer who can also, paint a bit on the side. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. To secure a steady job, you, the man who will one day define the high Renaissance, must market yourself almost exclusively as a merchant of death. This is a major historical fact, revealed in one of the most extraordinary job application letters ever written. You compose a letter to Ludovico Sforza, and in it, you lay out your skills in a carefully constructed 10-point list. Whether you had actually designed and tested any of these fantastic war machines, or if they were largely theoretical concepts from your private notebooks, is a matter of some debate. You were, if nothing else, a genius at writing a spectacular resume. The first 9 points of your letter have nothing to do with art. They are a terrifying and brilliant catalogue of your abilities as a military engineer, perfectly tailored to the paranoid and warlike nature of a 15th century Italian prince. You begin by stating you can construct extremely light, strong, and portable bridges for the pursuit or retreat of armies. You claim you know how to remove the water from the moats of besieged castles. You promise you can build siege engines to destroy any fortress, and that you know how to make cannons that are easy and convenient to transport, and which can hurl small stones almost like a storm. You go on. You claim you can make covered chariots, safe and unassailable, the ancient equivalent of an armored tank, which can break the lines of the most formidable enemy infantry. You promise catapults, mangonels, and other engines of wonderful efficacy. You offer to create secret winding underground passages to get into a besieged city. You are not just applying for a job, you are promising to revolutionize the entire art of warfare for your potential new boss. Finally, at the very end of your letter, After 9 full paragraphs detailing all the new and exciting ways you can help the Duke murder his enemies and destroy their cities, you add a 10th point, almost as an afterthought. Item, you write, in time of peace, I believe I can give perfect satisfaction and to the equal of any other in architecture and the construction of buildings. Also, I can carry out sculpture in marble, bronze or clay, and also in painting. I can do everything possible, as well as any other, whoever he may be. It is a stunning act of burying the lead. You, the man whose artistic genius is already the talk of Florence, present your ability to paint as a minor, secondary skill, equivalent to your plumbing and architectural abilities. This letter is a masterpiece of cynical, pragmatic marketing. You are a man whose true passions lie in observing the subtle play of light on a woman's smile, in understanding the delicate anatomy of a bird's wing, in capturing the psychological depth of a human soul. And yet, to secure a steady income and the freedom to pursue your real interests, you are forced to sell yourself as a weapons contractor. It is an act of profound intellectual and artistic compromise, and it works. Ludovico Sforza is intrigued. He invites you to Milan. He is less interested in your paintings and more interested in your designs for giant crossbows and your ideas for court festivals. A callback to your unfinished work. You have successfully run away from your failures as a painter by rebranding yourself as a multi-talented engineer. You have your new job. You have your new patron. And you have just committed yourself to spending the next chapter of your life catering to the military and theatrical whims of a ruthless Italian dictator, all while your true world-changing artistic genius is listed as other duties as assigned. You arrive in Milan, a city of wealth, power, and military might, a stark contrast to the intellectual and artistic hothouse of Florence. You are now in the service of Duke Ludovico Sforza, a man known as Il Moro, the Moor, for his dark complexion. He is a shrewd, ruthless, and deeply practical ruler. A callback to your job application letter, he is far more interested in your ability to design war machines and stage elaborate court festivals than he is in your talent for painting Madonnas. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. You have secured a prestigious court appointment, and your primary job is to be the Duke's personal party planner and gadget designer. Your first years in Milan are a whirlwind of strange, often frivolous, and deeply unartistic commissions. You are the court's resident genius, which means you are tasked with solving any and every problem the Duke can think of, no matter how trivial. You are asked to design a new, more efficient central heating system for the Duchess's private chambers. You are commissioned to create a complex automated lion for a visiting French dignitary, a mechanical beast that is supposed to walk forward, stop, and have its chest open to reveal a bouquet of lilies. It is a magnificent, pointless, and incredibly complicated piece of engineering. You spend weeks on the anatomical drawings and the clockwork mechanisms for a robot lion that will be used exactly once. You are also the Duke's chief master of ceremonies. You design the costumes, the stage sets, and the special effects for the endless masks and festivals that are the lifeblood of a Renaissance court. You create elaborate allegorical pageants, design revolving stages, and invent clever theatrical machinery. You are a genius who is spending his time making sure the decorations for the Duke's nephew's wedding are suitably impressive. It is a life of immense creativity, but it is a creativity in the service of fleeting, ephemeral spectacle. It pays the bills, but it does little to satisfy the deep, scientific and artistic questions that burn in your mind. But you have one great project, one commission that you believe will finally allow you to unite your skills as an artist and an engineer and create a monument for the ages. The Duke wants you to create the largest bronze equestrian statue the world has ever seen, a monument to his father, the great condottiero Francesco Sforza. It is to be called simply Il Cavallo, the horse. This is a major historical fact, the great doomed project that will consume you for the next 16 years of your life. It is the perfect commission for you. It involves art, anatomy, and a massive engineering challenge. You throw yourself into it with a manic, obsessive passion. A callback to your unfinished adoration, you do not simply start sculpting. You begin with a period of intense, almost pathological research. You need to understand the horse. Not just what it looks like, but its very essence. You spend countless hours in the ducal stables, sketching every muscle, every tendon, every vein. You fill notebooks with hundreds of anatomical drawings. You dissect the legs of dead horses to understand their bone structure. You write a complete treatise on equine anatomy. You become, without a doubt, the world's foremost expert on the physical structure of the horse. You are supposed to be making a statue, but you have decided as a preliminary step to reinvent the entire science of veterinary medicine. The plan is to cast a single monumental bronze horse over 24 feet high, a feat of engineering that has never been attempted before. You spend years designing a revolutionary new method for casting it in one single massive piece to avoid the seams and imperfections of other statues. But the years drag on. The research continues. The drawings become more and more detailed. You create a full-scale clay model of the horse, a colossal and magnificent sculpture that becomes a famous landmark in Milan. It is hailed as a masterpiece, but it is still just a clay model. The final, complex and incredibly expensive stage of casting it in bronze is constantly delayed. The Duke is growing impatient. You have been in his service for over a decade, and his great monument to his father is still a very large and increasingly fragile horse made of mud. Your old habit of brilliant beginnings and endlessly delayed conclusions has followed you to Milan. Your great bronze horse, your 16-year obsession, remains a colossal model of clay. Your patron, Duke Ludovico Sforza, is growing increasingly impatient with your endless research and delays. To keep you busy and to get at least one finished product out of you, he gives you another more conventional commission. You are to paint a mural on the wall of the dining hall, the refectory, of the convent of Santa Maria delle Grazie in Milan. It is a significant step down in terms of scale from a 24-foot bronze horse to a flat wall. But you decide you will make this the most psychologically complex and emotionally devastating depiction of a dinner party in the history of the world. The subject is the Last Supper. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. Even when you create one of the most sublime and revolutionary masterpieces in human history, your own restless, experimental genius ensures that it is a catastrophic technical failure. You begin the project around 1495. A callback to your obsessive research for the horse, you do not simply start painting. You spend months on preparatory sketches, filling your notebooks with detailed studies of composition, perspective, and most importantly, human emotion. You wander the streets and taverns of Milan, observing the faces of real people, merchants, peasants, even criminals, to find the perfect models for the apostles. You are not painting stock religious figures. You are painting a dozen individual men, each reacting to the most shocking news of their lives. Christ's announcement that one of them will betray him, with a unique and psychologically profound expression of fear, anger, doubt, or grief. Your composition is a radical break from tradition. You arrange the apostles in dynamic groups of three, a whirlwind of gesture and emotion that all revolves around the serene, tragic, and isolated figure of Christ at the center. The perspective is so perfect that the painted room seems like a real extension of the refectory itself. The prior of the convent, the head of the monastery, complains to the Duke that you are lazy. You spend hours, sometimes entire days, just standing on the scaffolding, staring at the wall, without picking up a single brush. You are summoned by the Duke to explain yourself. You calmly tell him that genius requires contemplation, that men of the highest intellect sometimes accomplish the most when they work the least, because they are composing in the mind. It is a brilliant excuse that you will use for the rest of your life. You also quietly threaten the prior that if he keeps bothering you, you will use his face as the model for Judas. The complaints stop, but your greatest innovation is also your greatest mistake. The traditional method for painting a mural is buon fresco or true fresco. This involves applying pigments mixed with water directly onto a thin layer of wet plaster. The paint is absorbed into the plaster, and as it dries, it becomes a permanent, integral part of the wall. It is an incredibly durable technique. It is also a technique that requires you to work very, very quickly, as you can only paint a small patch at a time before the plaster dries. You, a notoriously slow and deliberate painter who loves to revise and add subtle details over weeks and months, despise the unforgiving speed of fresco. So you decide to invent a new way to paint on a wall. You treat the dry stone wall as if it were a wooden panel. You seal it with a ground layer of gesso and pitch, and then you paint on top of that with a mixture of egg tempera and oil paint. This is a major and disastrous historical fact. This experimental technique allows you to work at your own leisurely pace to achieve the same subtle, smoky shading, sfumato, and luminous detail that you could in your panel paintings. It is a revolutionary approach. It is also a complete and utter technical disaster. The paint, failing to properly bond with the wall and trapped by the humidity of the refectory, begins to decay almost immediately. The exact composition of the experimental binder you used is a subject of intense scientific analysis, but it was a fatally unstable combination. Within just a few years of its completion in 1498, while you are still alive, your great masterpiece is already flaking off the wall. The colors are fading, the plaster is blistering. You have just created one of the most psychologically profound and compositionally brilliant works of art in the world, and it has the structural integrity and lifespan of a piece of fruit left out in the sun. A callback to your history of unfinished works. You have, in this case, actually finished a commission. But your own obsessive need to innovate, to reject the proven and reliable methods of the past, has ensured that your finished work will immediately begin to unfinish itself, a slow, tragic process of decay that will continue for the next 500 years. While you are painstakingly completing your decaying masterpiece and still trying to solve the immense engineering puzzle of your great bronze horse, the world outside the walls of your studio is beginning to unravel. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. Your entire life and career are utterly dependent on the whims of powerful, arrogant princes, and these men have a remarkable talent for getting themselves into catastrophic wars. Your patron, Ludovico Sforza, has been playing a dangerous game of shifting alliances, and he has finally made a fatal miscalculation. In 1499, the new king of France, Louis XIII, decides to act on a distant, vaguely legitimate claim he has to your home, the Duchy of Milan. He invades Italy with a very large and very effective army. Your comfortable, well-funded life is about to be violently interrupted. Ludovico, for all his cunning, cannot withstand the French onslaught. He had, years earlier, taken the 70 tons of bronze you had been painstakingly stockpiling for the casting of your great horse, a callback to the project that has consumed you, and had it melted down to make cannons. It was not enough. His army is defeated. In a panic, he flees the city, hoping to raise a new army of Swiss mercenaries. You are left behind in a city that is about to be conquered. You are now almost 50 years old, and once again, you are about to be unemployed and homeless. The French army marches into Milan, and they, it turns out, are not particularly interested in preserving the artistic and scientific projects of the ruler they have just overthrown. They stable their horses in the refectory of Santa Maria delle Grazie, the very room where your masterpiece, The Last Supper, is on display. The soldiers, oblivious to its artistic value and likely bored, begin to amuse themselves by throwing rocks at the painted figures, chipping away at the already fragile and flaking surface. Your most profound psychological drama is now being used for target practice by bored soldiers. But the most devastating blow is yet to come. Your other great life's work, the colossal clay model of the Sforza horse, Il Cavallo, still stands in the courtyard where you worked on it for 16 years. It is one of the wonders of Milan, a testament to your genius. The invading French soldiers, however, are not art critics. Whether they acted out of sheer boorish vandalism or if it was a deliberate political act to symbolically destroy a monument dedicated to the Sforza dynasty they had just overthrown, the result is the same. They begin to use your magnificent 24-foot-tall sculpture for archery practice. You can only imagine the scene. The French bowmen, laughing and making bets, firing their arrows into the flank of your great horse. The clay, unprotected from the elements and now riddled with arrows, begins to crumble. The magnificent head, with its flaring nostrils and intelligent eyes, cracks and falls to the ground. The powerful legs, which you had spent years studying and perfecting, buckle and collapse. Your life's work, the result of nearly 2 decades of obsessive anatomical study and revolutionary engineering, is destroyed in a single afternoon of casual, pointless vandalism. It is reduced to a pile of mud, straw, and broken dreams. You have spent 17 years in Milan, the most productive period of your life. And what do you have to show for it? A mural that is already turning to dust, and a pile of mud that was once a horse. Your patron, Ludovico Sforza, will eventually be captured by the French and will die in a miserable French dungeon. You are now a freelance genius once more, a refugee from a fallen city. You pack up your notebooks, the thousands of pages of drawings and observations that are now your only true possessions. You take your few remaining pupils and you flee Milan, a man whose 2 greatest and most ambitious projects have been utterly and completely destroyed, one by his own flawed genius and the other by the simple, brutal stupidity of war. You are nearly 50 years old, a celebrated artist and a refugee. A callback to your uncertain youth. You are once again a man without a patron, a freelancer in a war-torn Italy. You wander for a time. You go to Mantua, then to Venice, where you work on plans to defend the city from a potential Turkish naval attack. But the work is temporary. You are adrift. And then, in 1502, you find a new employer. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. After fleeing a war, you find your next steady job in the direct service of one of the most ruthless and feared warlords of the entire Renaissance. Your new boss is Cesare Borgia. He is the brilliant, charming, ambitious, and famously psychopathic son of Pope Alexander VI. Cesare is on a brutal military campaign to carve out a personal kingdom for himself in central Italy, conquering city after city with a combination of military genius and treacherous cruelty. He's not a great patron of the arts in the traditional sense. He is, however, very interested in your old resume, a callback to the letter you wrote to the Duke of Milan, where you advertised your skills as a weapons designer and military engineer. He hires you not as a painter, but as his Captain General and Chief Engineer. Your new job is to travel in the wake of a conquering army, not to paint its glory, but to survey its gains. This is a major historical fact, a strange and dark chapter in your life. For about a year, you are the chief architect for a tyrant. You travel through the lands he has just brutally subjugated. You inspect his fortresses, you design new fortifications, you plan canal projects to make his new territories more profitable. You are a man who, according to his own writings, loves nature and is likely a vegetarian because you cannot stand to see animals suffer. You are now working for a man who is famous for, among other things, having his own brother-in-law strangled to death in the Vatican. The moral compromises of a freelance career in the Renaissance are, it must be said, significant. It is during this grim period, however, that your genius for observation produces one of your most revolutionary creations. While working for Borgia, you create a series of maps, most famously, a map of the newly conquered city of Imola. This is an obscure but world-changing detail. Before you, maps were often pictorial, artistic, and wildly inaccurate. You, with your obsessive need to understand the world from a scientific perspective, invent the modern art of cartography. You create an iconographic map, a perfectly scaled top-down plan of the city. You get the details by walking the streets with an odometer you likely invented, measuring every angle, every street width, every building. The result is a map so accurate, so modern, it looks like an aerial photograph. It is a work of scientific and artistic genius. It is also a tool of brutal military control. With this map, Cesare Borgia can plan the movements of his troops, understand lines of fire, and control the city's population with a terrifying efficiency. You are using your divine artistic and scientific talent to help a tyrant more efficiently manage his ill-gotten territory. Your personal feelings about working for a man as notoriously cruel as Cesare Borgia are, as usual, completely absent from your thousands of notebook pages. Were you a detached, amoral scientist, fascinated by the cold, hard geometry of power and the art of war? Were you a pragmatist, simply taking a well-paid and interesting job during a difficult time? Or were you simply terrified of your new employer? Your notes are filled with drawings of birds, flowing water, and human anatomy, but they are utterly silent on the state of your own soul. This period of your life is a profound and sucky paradox. You are at the height of your scientific and engineering powers. You are inventing modern cartography, but you are doing so in the service of a man who represents the very opposite of the humanist ideals of the Renaissance. You are a man of creation, working for a man of destruction. After about a year, Cesare Borgia's own political fortunes begin to crumble after the death of his father, the Pope. Your employment ends. You are once again a freelancer. You leave the service of the warlord, your notebooks filled with brilliant new maps and a series of moral compromises that you will never, ever write about. Your brief, morally ambiguous career as a warlord's engineer is over. You return to Florence in 1503, a man now in his early 50s. You are a living legend, a celebrated master, and the city that once saw you as a talented but unreliable apprentice now welcomes you back with a commission of unprecedented scale and prestige. The Florentine Republic, having recently thrown off the rule of the Medici family, wants to decorate its new Grand Council chamber, the Hall of 500 in the Palazzo Vecchio, with patriotic murals celebrating its military victories. You are commissioned to paint one of them, the Battle of Anghiari. This should be the crowning achievement of your career, a chance to create a monumental masterpiece in your home city. But this is the next reason it sucks to be you. The city government, in a stroke of what they probably considered brilliant motivational strategy, decides to hire your angriest, most talented and much younger rival Michelangelo to paint another massive battle scene on the wall directly opposite yours. It is less a commission and more a publicly funded high-stakes art battle, a duel of geniuses. Your rivalry with Michelangelo is a major historical fact, a clash of titans with completely opposite personalities. The exact nature of your relationship is a source of great art, historical gossip. Was it a purely professional competition or a deep, personal animosity? What is clear is that you could not stand each other. You are elegant, charming, handsome, and famously slow and deliberate in your work. Michelangelo is brooding, scruffy, irascible, and ferociously, almost inhumanly productive. He despises you, seeing you as a flighty, over-intellectual courtier who can't finish a project. You, in turn, see him as a brutish, uncultured stonecutter with a bad temper and a lack of social grace. Your working relationship is a model of Renaissance professionalism and mutual contempt. The entire city of Florence is buzzing with anticipation for this artistic showdown. You both begin work on your full-scale preparatory drawings or cartoons. They are displayed publicly, and all of Florence flocks to see them, treating it like a major sporting event. Michelangelo's cartoon for his Battle of Cassina is a masterpiece of anatomical power, a tangle of muscular male nudes. Your cartoon, however, is something else entirely. It is a work of pure, terrifying, kinetic violence. You choose to depict not a grand panorama of the battle, but its chaotic, brutal heart, a swirling, desperate fight for a standard, a vortex of screaming men and biting, kicking, terrified horses. It is a profound meditation on the most bestial madness of war. It is hailed as a revolutionary masterpiece. You have, by all accounts, won the first round. Now you must paint it on the wall. And this is where your old self-sabotaging demons return. A callback to your disastrous experience with the Last Supper, you once again decide to ignore the proven, reliable, and ancient technique of buon fresco. You are still convinced you can invent a better way. You become obsessed with an obscure recipe for wall painting mentioned by the ancient Roman writer Pliny the Elder, an experimental technique involving hot wax, known as encaustic painting. You begin to paint your great battle scene on the wall of the council chamber. It is magnificent. But your experimental technique fails, this time even more spectacularly than before. The plaster does not absorb the paint correctly. The colors are not drying. In a desperate attempt to set the pigments, you order large braziers of hot coals to be brought in to heat the wall. The result is a catastrophe. The heat is too intense. Instead of drying, the wax in your paints begins to melt. Your masterpiece, your swirling vortex of battle, literally begins to melt and run down the wall in a ruinous, sticky, multicolored mess. It is a complete, total and utterly public humiliation. In the great artistic duel with your most hated rival, you have been defeated, not by his genius, but by your own stubborn, arrogant refusal to use a method that actually works. You abandon the project in disgrace. Michelangelo, for his part, is then called to Rome by the Pope and abandons his own fresco as well. Neither of the great battle paintings is ever completed, but his is an unfinished masterpiece. Yours is an unfinished, melted disaster. You are a genius who has for a second time been sabotaged by your own restless experimental mind. You leave Florence soon after, your reputation once again that of a man whose brilliance is matched only by his inability to deliver a finished product. You have failed, publicly and spectacularly. Your great artistic duel with Michelangelo has ended not with a bang, but with a melted, dripping mess. You abandon the ruined fresco of the Battle of Anghiari, and with it, you effectively abandon Florence. Your reputation as a master painter is now permanently asterisked with the footnote, "Brilliant, but may not actually finish the painting, and if he does, it might melt." You are in your 50s, and your career as a painter of grand public commissions is essentially over. So you retreat from the frustrating world of patrons and deadlines and turn your focus inward to a quieter, more personal, and far more dangerous hobby: secretly dissecting human corpses in the middle of the night. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. Your boundless scientific curiosity now leads you into the darkest, most taboo corners of Renaissance society. You are driven by a pure, obsessive, and possibly pathological need to understand the ultimate machine, the human body. And the only way to do that is to take it apart. This is a major historical fact, and one of the most remarkable aspects of your life. Over the course of your career, you will dissect more than 30 human corpses, male and female, of all ages, from fetuses to old men. Your new studio is the cold, stone cellar of a hospital morgue, likely in Florence, or later in Rome. Your new models are the unclaimed bodies of criminals, paupers, and plague victims. The work is illegal in spirit, if not always in strict letter of the law. While universities were sometimes granted permission for a single public anatomical dissection per year for medical training, your private, repeated, and far more thorough explorations were deeply controversial. This was a world that saw the body as a sacred vessel created in God's image. To cut it open was seen by many as an act of grotesque and impious desecration. You must work in secret, often by the flickering, insufficient light of a candle, the air thick with the smell of death and the pungent chemicals you use as preservatives. It is a significant departure from the perfumed courts of Milan. The full extent of your anatomical studies is unknown, as many of your notebooks were scattered or lost after your death. How you managed to gain access to so many bodies without running afoul of the authorities is a secret you took to your grave. But the work you did was revolutionary. You are not just a curious artist, you are a pioneering scientist. You are the first person in history to accurately describe the human spine, the first to understand how the aortic valve works, the first to draw a human fetus in the womb with stunning accuracy. You are discovering the fundamental mechanics of human life. And as you work, you draw. You fill your notebooks with hundreds of anatomical drawings. They are works of breathtaking, almost unbearable beauty. You use your artist's eye to render the complex machinery of the body with a clarity that no one has ever achieved before. The delicate branching of the bronchial tree, the intricate web of muscles in a human hand, the elegant chambers of the heart. You draw them not just as medical diagrams, but as works of profound art. You are a man who loves nature and is reportedly a vegetarian because you cannot stand to inflict pain on living creatures. You are now spending your nights elbow deep in the bodies of the dead, exploring the source of that life. It is a deeply spiritual and deeply nauseating quest. This is the sucky reality of your genius. You are doing arguably your most important and groundbreaking scientific work. You are making discoveries that could, if published, revolutionize the study of medicine and save countless lives. But you can tell no one. You cannot publish your findings. To do so would risk the wrath of the church and the revulsion of a society that is not ready for your discoveries. You are a man centuries ahead of your time, and the price of that is to be treated as a ghoul, a necromancer, a man who dabbles in the dark arts. A callback to your man without letters status. You are once again forced to learn from the source itself, peeling back the skin of reality because the books of the world are closed to you or insufficient for your needs. You are seeing things no human has ever seen before, and you must keep it all a secret, hidden away in the pages of your private notebooks. You are a man who has unlocked the secrets of the human body, but you are utterly, profoundly alone with your knowledge. Your secret nocturnal studies of human anatomy have given you a profound and unparalleled understanding of the machine that is the human body. But this knowledge is a treasure locked in a vault. It is too dangerous to publish, so you do the only thing you can. You pour it into your art. You return to painting, but not to the grand public commissions that have brought you so much grief. You accept a small private commission from a wealthy Florentine silk merchant named Francesco del Giocondo. He wants a portrait of his wife, Lisa Gherardini. It is a simple, straightforward, and relatively unimportant job, the kind of work a master painter does to keep the lights on. It should take you a few months. Instead, it will become the greatest and most frustrating obsession of your life. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. You are about to create the most famous painting in the history of the world, and you will be completely and totally incapable of ever finishing it. You begin work on the portrait of Lisa del Giocondo around 1503. A callback to your obsessive research, you do not simply paint a likeness of the woman. You begin a scientific and philosophical investigation into the very nature of human identity. You use your new, unparalleled knowledge of anatomy, gained from your secret dissections, to structure the painting from the inside out. You understand the bone of her skull beneath the skin, the delicate play of the muscles around her lips and eyes that create her expression. You are not painting a surface. You are painting a living, breathing organism. This is where your genius becomes a form of self-sabotage. You become fascinated with capturing not just her appearance, but the fleeting, transient quality of a human thought, an inner life. You want to paint the very soul, and you decide the key to this is her smile. You spend years, on and off, working on this single, subtle expression. This is a major historical fact of the painting. It is not a simple, happy smile. It is a scientifically engineered ambiguity. You use your knowledge of optics and human perception to create a smile that seems to appear and disappear, depending on where the viewer looks. It is a masterpiece of your signature sfumato technique, the smoky blurring of edges, which you perfect here. The corners of the mouth and eyes are deliberately indistinct, forcing the viewer's brain to interpret the expression to complete the picture. It is less a painting and more a quiet, interactive psychological experiment, but your obsession goes beyond her face. A callback to your love of the natural world, you become equally obsessed with the landscape behind her. It is not a real place. It is a strange, dreamlike, geological fantasy of jagged mountains and winding rivers, a world that seems to be in a constant state of flux, of creation and erosion. You are painting not just a person, but a person's place in the grand, cosmic scheme of nature. Your notebooks from this period are filled with studies of geology, of hydrology, of how water shapes the earth. You are trying to cram the entire history of the planet into the background of a merchant's wife's portrait. The years drag on. The painting remains in your studio. Your patron, Francesco del Giocondo, who just wanted a nice picture of his wife to hang in his new dining room, never gets his painting. You have become so obsessed with it, so deeply invested in the scientific and philosophical problems it presents, that you can no longer see it as a commission to be delivered. It has become your personal laboratory, a canvas upon which you are trying to synthesize everything you have ever learned about art, anatomy, geology, optics, and the human soul. The sucky reality is that your greatest masterpiece is also your greatest professional failure. You have been paid to do a job, and you refuse to hand over the product. You will keep the painting with you for the rest of your life, carrying it with you from city to city, constantly adding tiny, imperceptible brushstrokes, forever chasing a state of perfection that your own restless mind will never allow you to achieve. You have created a work that will mesmerize the world for 500 years. You have also, in the process, completely and totally ripped off a Florentine silk merchant. While you endlessly tinker with the subtle smile of the Mona Lisa, a painting that has now become your personal property rather than a delivered commission, your true passion continues unabated. It is not painting, it is knowing. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. You are a man with a mind capable of inventing the future, but you are trapped in a present that lacks the technology, the funding, and the focus to build any of it. Your greatest and most revolutionary work is confined to the secret, chaotic pages of your private notebooks. You carry these notebooks with you everywhere. They are your real life's work. This is a major historical fact, the great repository of your genius. Over the course of your life, you will fill more than 7,000 pages with a dizzying, almost insane variety of observations, calculations, and designs. They are not organized treatises. They are chaotic, unfiltered streams of consciousness, your mind thinking on paper. Your notebooks are filled with brilliant, world-changing ideas. They are also filled with grocery lists, drafts of angry letters to your patrons, crude jokes, and sketches of interesting-looking cats you saw in the street. Your mind is a magnificent and profoundly disorganized attic of genius. And to protect this private world, you employ an obscure but famous technique. You write most of your notes backwards in a strange right-to-left mirror script. Future generations will see this as a sign of your secretive, mysterious nature, a deliberate attempt to code your discoveries. The boring, practical truth is that you are left-handed. Writing from left to right in the 15th century with wet ink meant smudging everything your hand passed over. Writing in reverse was simply a clever and much cleaner way to write. It is a practical solution, not a secret code. Flipping through the pages of these notebooks is a journey into a mind that is centuries ahead of its time. In them, you design a helicopter or aerial screw based on your observations of maple seeds. You design a multi-barreled machine gun, a scythed chariot with whirling blades, and an armored vehicle uncannily similar to a modern tank, a callback to the military resume you wrote for the Duke of Milan. You design a diving suit, complete with air hoses and a glass mask, and a submarine. You have, on paper, invented the next 500 years of military and industrial technology. You do not, however, invent a reliable way to make a mural that doesn't immediately start flaking off the wall. Whether you ever intended to organize and publish this vast collection of scientific notes, or if they were always meant as a purely personal, intellectual diary, is a question that has fascinated scholars for centuries. The sheer chaos of their organization suggests you were more interested in the process of discovery than in the tedious work of communicating it to others. You are not writing for an audience. You are simply trying to understand everything. This is the sucky heart of your tragedy. You are a visionary, but you are a visionary without a factory. You can design the machine, but you have no one to build it, no material strong enough, and no power source to make it work. Your flying machine designs are brilliant, based on years of obsessive, pioneering study into the anatomy and aerodynamics of birds. But they are impossible to build with the wood and canvas of your era. They require steel, aluminum, and an internal combustion engine, materials and technologies that will not exist for another 400 years. So your greatest ideas remain trapped on the page, beautiful, brilliant, and completely unrealized. You are a man who can see the future, but you are stuck in the present. You spend your life filling these notebooks with a breathtaking volume of genius. It is a legacy of almost unimaginable potential. It is also, in your own lifetime, a legacy of almost total practical failure. You are not a great inventor in the eyes of your contemporaries. You are a great artist who has some strange, impractical hobbies and a habit of never finishing his work. The true scale of your scientific mind will remain a secret, locked away in your own messy, backward handwriting, not to be fully appreciated for centuries. After your disastrous and morally compromising tenure with Cesare Borgia and the public humiliation of your melted fresco in Florence, you are once again a master without a stable home. You wander Italy for several years, working for a time again in Milan, but the political situation is too unstable. You are now in your 60s, an old man in a rapidly changing world. And so in 1513, you make one last great move, hoping to secure a final glorious chapter for your career. You travel to Rome, the magnificent center of the Christian world and the undisputed new capital of the art world. Your hope is to gain the patronage of the new Medici Pope, Leo VI. This is the next reason it sucks to be you. You are a living legend, and you are also completely and totally irrelevant. You arrive in Rome, expecting to be welcomed as the great master you are, and you are. You are given a generous stipend and a suite of rooms in the Belvedere Palace at the Vatican, but you are treated less like a working artist and more like a fascinating antique curiosity. The artistic world has moved on without you. Rome is no longer interested in your slow, methodical, scientific approach to art. It is a city in the thrall of a new, more vigorous and monumental style of the High Renaissance. And it is a city completely dominated by two younger, faster, and more productive geniuses. The Pope's palace is currently being decorated by a brilliant, charming, and impossibly prolific young man from Urbino named Raphael. His magnificent frescoes in the Vatican apartments are the talk of the town. And the ceiling of the Pope's private chapel, the Sistine Chapel, has just recently been completed by your old friend and bitter rival Michelangelo, a callback to your disastrous duel in Florence. He is now universally hailed as Il Divino, the Divine One. The market for aging, famously unreliable geniuses is surprisingly competitive, and you have been thoroughly overshadowed. The reasons for your relative lack of major commissions in Rome are complex. Was it due to the Pope's awareness of your notorious reputation for not finishing things? Was it the result of political maneuvering by your younger, more energetic rivals? Or had your own interests simply shifted so far towards science that you were no longer truly interested in being a conventional painter? What is certain is that you are not given any grand commissions, While Michelangelo and Raphael are creating immortal masterpieces of religious art that will define the age, you spend your time in your Vatican workshop, mostly alone, working on your own strange, private projects. You are a celebrated genius, but you are also seen as old, slow, and as everyone remembers, very unlikely to actually finish anything. You have become a prestigious but largely ornamental feature of the papal court. Your days are spent not in the creation of great art, but in a series of bizarre and frustrating scientific experiments. You work on developing a new, more efficient way to manufacture concave mirrors, hoping to create a great solar furnace, a project that never comes to fruition. You spend weeks trying to create a new type of oil varnish, which you test on a painting for a papal official, only to have it fail so badly the work is ruined before it even leaves your studio. You dissect lizards. You continue your anatomical studies in the Roman hospitals, but your work is now hampered by your growing fame and the suspicion it arouses. You are accused by a German mirror maker of practicing necromancy, and the Pope, tired of the controversy, forbids you from dissecting any more human corpses. This is the sucky reality of your final years in your homeland. You are a lion in winter, surrounded by younger, stronger lions who are getting all the best kills. You are a man whose mind is still teeming with a universe of ideas, but the world around you only wants what is new and fashionable. A callback to your life's great tragedy. You are once again misunderstood. You are not seen as the great scientist and inventor you know yourself to be. You are seen only as a great painter who, for some strange reason, no longer seems to want to paint. You are an old man, out of time, out of fashion, and out of favor, living as a guest in a city that admires your past but has no place for your future. You are an old man in Rome, a city that worships the new and has little patience for the old. A callback to your rivalry with Michelangelo. He is at the peak of his powers, a celebrated titan. You are a living relic, a genius out of fashion. And then an unexpected offer arrives, a lifeline from across the Alps. The new, young and charismatic King of France, Francis I, has invaded Italy and reconquered Milan. He is a passionate admirer of your work and of the Italian Renaissance. He invites you to come to France and accept the title of first painter, engineer, and architect to the king. It is the 16th century equivalent of a legendary but retired rock star being offered a lifetime residency in Las Vegas with a royal salary. This is the next reason it sucks to be you, and it is the most bittersweet irony of your entire life. You will finally find the perfect patron, a man who understands and values your mind above all else, and it will come at the exact moment when your body has finally begun to fail you completely. You accept the king's offer. In 1516, at the age of 64, you leave your homeland of Italy for the last time. You make the arduous journey across the Alps on the back of a mule. You bring with you your most treasured possessions, your thousands of pages of chaotic, brilliant notebooks, and 3 paintings that you have tinkered with for years and refuse to give up. St. John the Baptist, the Virgin and Child with St. Anne, and your most beloved, most obsessive and still technically unfinished portrait, the Mona Lisa. You arrive in France and are treated not as a hired craftsman, but as a revered oracle. King Francis, I gives you a beautiful chateau to live in, the Chateau of Clos-Lucé, connected by an underground tunnel to his own royal residence at Amboise. He gives you a magnificent pension, and he gives you the one thing no other patron ever has, complete and total freedom. This is a major historical fact of your final years. The king does not give you any major demanding commissions. His main job requirement for you is to simply be Leonardo da Vinci. He visits you frequently, sometimes daily, walking over to your chateau to spend hours in conversation with you, asking you about philosophy, architecture, anatomy, and your vast, brilliant ideas. After a lifetime of dealing with impatient dukes and demanding monks, this is a deeply strange and wonderful new arrangement. The accounts of the deep friendship between you and King Francis I, told by later artists like Benvenuto Cellini, may be somewhat romanticized. but they speak to a clear truth. The French king held you in a kind of reverence that no Italian patron ever had. He did not see you as a tool to be used. He saw you as a wellspring of knowledge to be appreciated. You have, at the very end of your life, found your paradise, a place where you are paid simply to think, to talk, and to exist. And then the final cruel irony strikes. Sometime after your arrival in France, you suffer a stroke. It paralyzes your right hand. You, a man whose entire life, whose entire genius has been expressed through the unparalleled skill of your hand, can no longer hold a brush. You can no longer draw. You can still think, you can still talk, but the primary instrument of your art and your science has been taken from you. You have been given total creative freedom. At the exact moment, your body has taken away your ability to create. So you spend your final years in the quiet comfort of your French chateau, a lion in winter. A callback to your most famous unfinished work, you can sit and look at the Mona Lisa, which hangs in your study, but you can no longer add those tiny, imperceptible brushstrokes to her smile. Your days are spent with your loyal assistants, trying to organize the thousands of pages of your notebooks, a desperate final attempt to put the chaotic, sprawling contents of your mind into some kind of order before it is too late. You are surrounded by respect, comfort, and the genuine affection of a king, but you are also trapped in a failing body, a mind still teeming with ideas that can no longer find their way onto the page. You have everything you ever wanted, and it has come far, far too late. You spend your final years in the quiet comfort of your French chateau, a respected sage and a friend to a king. Your right hand is paralyzed, a final cruel joke from a body that has carried your restless mind for 65 years. You can no longer paint, so you focus on your final project, your own legacy. You spend your days with your most loyal pupil, Francesco Melzi, attempting the impossible task of organizing the thousands upon thousands of pages of your chaotic notebooks, a callback to the sprawling, disorganized attic of your mind. You are trying, at the last moment, to put your life's work in order. In your last years, your mind is still active. You draw up plans for a new royal palace and city at Romorantin for the king's mother, a project that is, in classic Leonardo fashion, breathtakingly ambitious and never actually built. This is the last and most profound reason it sucks to be you. You will die completely and totally misunderstood. You are revered as one of the greatest painters of your age, but the true scale and scope of your genius, the work that you yourself considered most important, is a secret that will die with you, hidden in the unreadable chaos of your own notes. On May 2nd, 1519, at the age of 67, you die at your home in Clos-Lucé. The legend, famously told by the artist Giorgio Vasari, is that you died in the arms of the King of France, a noble and poetic end for a great artist. The reality is likely less dramatic, but you have finally finished your last project, your own life. You leave your paintings, your drawings, and your priceless collection of notebooks to your faithful student, Melzi. And this is where the final tragedy begins. Melzi spends the next 50 years of his life dutifully preserving your work. But after he dies, your legacy is shattered. Your notebooks, this incredible treasure trove of scientific discovery and invention, are seen by his heirs as little more than a collection of strange drawings. They are sold off, broken up, and scattered across the courts and libraries of Europe. Many are lost forever. The world has no idea what it has lost. For the next 2 centuries, while the scientific revolution you foreshadowed is taking place, your pioneering work in anatomy, geology, optics, and engineering lies dormant and unread, hidden in messy, backward handwriting that almost no one can decipher. You die famous as a great painter, but even that legacy is a wreck. A callback to your life's greatest works, the Adoration of the Magi and the Battle of Anghiari, are unfinished, eventually lost or painted over. The Last Supper, your Milanese masterpiece, is a decaying, flaking ruin, a ghost of a painting. Your colossal bronze horse was destroyed before it was ever cast. Many of your other paintings are either unfinished or their attribution is debated. The Mona Lisa itself, the painting you carried with you for 16 years, is simply absorbed into the French royal collection. A curious portrait by an esteemed Italian master, its true, world-shaking fame still centuries away. The man the world remembers in the years after your death is a shadow of the man you actually were. They remember the great painter, but they have no knowledge of the great scientist. They do not know about your discoveries of the workings of the human heart, your pioneering work in geology, or your designs for flying machines. Your greatest achievements are a secret. You are a man who had a mind that leapt centuries into the future, but you could never quite manage to finish the work that was right in front of you. And so your story ends, not with a grand finale, but with a quiet, slow fade into misunderstanding. You were a man whose genius was so vast, so curious, and so pathologically distractible that your own time could not possibly contain it. Your life was a series of brilliant, breathtaking beginnings, glorious sketches of a future you could see but never fully build. The great tragedy of your life was not your failures, but the fact that the world would not be ready to understand the true scale of your success for another 400 years. You were a man from the future, trapped in the past, and the price of that was a life of profound, brilliant, and deeply frustrating loneliness.